Okay, this is chapter 11, and we're talking about power. Okay. This is going to be another two-part lecture, and the first one is going to be dealing with power, and then after that we'll be talking about political behavior. So a huge truck is coming down the road at you, and a police officer stands in the way, and the truck comes screeching to a halt. Why does the truck come screeching to the halt? It's not because the cop has a gun and he can point at the truck and make it stop, because that gun's probably going to be pretty ineffective at stopping such a huge object. But the cop has a badge. Okay, the policeman is going to be. This is the difference between power. Power is the ability to influence another. Right? I can make you do a lot of things if I point a gun to your head, but authority is the right to influence another. Now, the authority is what is going to give the credibility to the power that is the gun. Otherwise, you're just an outlaw. Okay, that's not where you want to be in an organization. You want to have the proper authority in order to exercise whatever power you're exercising. So the concept of power is influence is the process of affecting the thoughts and behavior and feelings of another person. That's the idea behind influence. And there's kind of a zone of indifference, and this is where you know, when you say, please go do X, Y, and Z to an employee, in the zone of indifference, the employee goes, oh, yeah, well, of course. I mean, that's a legitimate thing to do. I mean, I am at work, and that is my boss. And so managers are interested in expanding that zone of indifference in order to have greater and greater influence. Now, the sources of power, there are essentially 5 major sources of power. Reward power. As a boss, you can, or a manager, you can reward those that you want to reward. There's coercive power, where you can give an unpleasant experience. Now, that's a punishment, right? Or there's legitimate power, and that is that you have influential rights because of your particular position or office. Okay, I'm the manager, that's why. Okay, then there is referent power, which is based on interpersonal attraction. That is, you just like the person, right? That's referent power. And then there's expert power. That is, an agent has knowledge of target needs. Okay, so somebody who knows things that people in the organization need have expert power. Now, it turns out that good managers tend to use particular ones, and bad managers tend to use particular ones. Bad managers tend to rely on threat and coercion and force, and sometimes reward, which is the opposite of that, and office. Good managers tend to rely on referent and expert power. There's also information power, which is similar to expert power, but we're not going to belabor that. Criteria for using power ethically. Does the behavior produce a good outcome for people both inside and outside the organization? Does the behavior respect the rights of others? Does the behavior treat all parties equitably and fairly? If you can't say yes to all of those, you ought to have kind of a gut check of whether you should be doing what you're doing. 2 faces of power. It can be selfish or it can be unselfish. Personal power, if it's just used for personal gain, it's not really all that useful in an organization generally. In an organizational context, social power is what you're trying to do, because you're trying to create motivation, because you're caring about others, you're accomplishing group goals and activities, because you're trying to empower others, help them. What we'd say in path goal theory in the other lecture on leadership, what's your job as a leader? Your job is to move from point A to point B with your people and to go ahead of them to clear a path so that they can get where they need to go. That's your job, right? Successful power users have a high need for social power. They approach relationships with a communal orientation. That is, that we're working together. We're all on the same team. It's not about I and you. It's about us. Okay, they focus on the needs and interests of others. And when you do this, and when you focus on the needs of others, you're really helping your followers to see themselves differently and to approach things differently. Now, Kanter symbols of power. Here I'm going to switch gears a little bit, where we're talking about what does power look like? How do we see when somebody's powerful? Well, if you can intercede for someone in trouble, or obtain placements for favored employees, or exceed your budget limitations, or place items in meeting agendas, or have early access to information, well, you're seen as powerful. Of course, the opposite is true as well. You can be seen as powerless if you, as a top executive, for example, have to deal with budget cuts. Whoops. Give me a second. Okay, have to deal with budget cuts, or if you have to punish others, or as a manager, if you have to assign external blame on others. That's not really a powerful place to be. As part of the staff, if you're powerless, if you have to resist change, or you engage in turf protection, it's because you feel less powerful. Okay, so you can see these signs if you know what to look for. And then Korda. Korda's power symbols are things like, are there more people that inconvenience themselves on your behalf than those who on whose behalf you would inconvenience yourself, right? Because bosses require something of you. I think that's a horrible way of looking at it, because as a leader, the higher you go, the more you should be inconveniencing yourself to help them, to empower others. Your time becomes less and less your own as you become a leader. As you grow up in the organization, you should be trying to deal with or help other people. So I really don't like this definition. Status is a person's relative standing in a group based on prestige or difference, how desirable or important you are in the process. And then he looks at power symbols like the size of the desk, the size of the table, the furnishings, how you relate to time. Is your time very valuable? Who has access to you? Who can get a hold of you? Or to whom do you have access? That's another way of looking at power. Now, that's part one. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to come back to part two, where we're going to deal